It's synthetic. Could this be more of Arlequon's technology? Maybe they're behind it. Jeez, I thought those things took off!
One day the world went into chaos due to something called inversia, which caused the world to change drastically. While some nations benefited from this catastrophe, most perished, eventually sparking a new city, Asterisk. Within this city are 6 major schools who all compete in a power struggle to name the strongest in events called Battle Festas. Episode 1. Welcome to the Asterisk War, where we are introduced to our protagonist, Ayato. After the inversion, not only did it give new powers to humans, but it also gave mana-like power to gifted individuals. While walking to his class, Ayato stumbles upon a fallen handkerchief, so he decides to return it. He jumps up into the room it fell from and sees a girl changing before him. Instead of clearing up the misunderstanding, Ayato continues to stare at the girl, sneaking multiple peeks at her. He eventually decides to turn around and waits for her to get properly dressed. The girl tells him he can turn around now and asks what he is doing at her dorm. He explains that he saw the handkerchief fall out the window and just wanted to return it. Girl thanks him for returning it and introduces herself as Julius, but she tells him he needs to pay for seeing her naked. Ayato notices she has something called a strega, a powerful element gifted to certain individuals. He dodges the attack and lands outside the dorm uninjured. Julius tells him that he must pay for spying on a changing maiden, so he needs to duel her. Ayato tries to give her the excuse of him being new to the school, but she sees through it. Julius then challenges him to a duel and reveals she is the rank 5 in the entire school. Julius proposes to Ayato that the loser has to do whatever the other says. Ayato attempts to refuse her duel, giving the excuse he doesn't have a sword, but a classmate throws him one. Ayato draws the sword, showing he is ready to take down Julius. He officially accepts the duel, and the two's battle starts counting down. Julius wastes no time, summoning in a piercing flame attack, but it is easily evaded by Ayato. This time she increases the speed and size, forcing Ayato to fall back. He narrowly avoids her attacks, impressing the onlookers in the crowd. Julius notices that something is off, no normal person being able to avoid her attacks. Julius decides to send in a large-scale unavoidable attack this time, but to her surprise, Ayato slices right through it. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. What would you do if you walk in on a babe like Julius? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now back to the recap. Ayato gets in close range, and rather than slice her, he pushes her down, saving her from an incoming attack. Ayato tells her that he was saving her from someone else's attack. Suddenly, a girl approaches and tells the two of them that she is forcibly ending the duel. The girl tells Julius that Ayato hasn't finished his paperwork, so he needs to go with her. Ayato thanks her, but asks who she is, to which she introduces herself as Claudia, student council president. Ayato follows her and learns that despite being a first year like himself, she is the student council president. The two of them become friendly, telling each other to drop the formalities. Ayato follows her and walks into her office with a spectacular view of the city's skyline. Claudia clicks a button and the two of them fly above the city somehow. Claudia tells Ayato that at their school there is only one objective: to win. She shows Ayato all of the other schools and introduces a battle called the Festas. Between the 6 schools, only one person can emerge victorious as the strongest. Claudia asks Ayato to participate and become the victor of it all. Ayato tells her that he isn't interested in that kind of stuff, but rather he asks about his sister. Claudia shows Ayato his sister's record, but it has been tampered with and deleted. Claudia tells Ayato that although she attended the school, she was involved in some shady business. Claudia decides to show Ayato the weapon she used, something called an ogre lux. The ogre lux have personalities of their own, and all wield different powers. Claudia tells Ayato that his sister is no longer at the school, and that the sword she used has no records on it. Ayato tells her that even though his sister isn't attending anymore, he's still looking for a purpose. Claudia tells him the first step he should take is getting his own ogre lux, so he asks to try out the one his sister used. Ayato then asks what paperwork he has to do, him originally going there for that reason. Claudia hugs him from behind and tells him that it was all a lie just so she could talk to him. Claudia reveals to Ayato that he has no more paperwork and can proceed to class. Ayato is welcomed into his new classroom and is placed next to Julius. After class, Ayato asks Julius, despite what has happened, for them to be friends. Julius tells him that she won't be friends, but she is indebted to him for saving her. The man says hi to Ayato and introduces himself as Yabuki, telling Ayato he is his roommate. Earlier on, Yabuki called Julius a princess, so Ayato asks if she really is one. He reveals that Julius is not only called a princess at school, but is a bona fide princess in a small European country. Ayato asks why she has no friends when she's princess, and Yabuki tells him of all the time she rejects people. Ayato then thanks Yabuki for lending him the sword, making Yabuki question how he knew it was him. While they are walking, Ayato notices a man picking on Julius, asking why she dueled a newcomer. Julius tells the man that she has already defeated him 3 times. Any more is pointless. Ayato asks Yabuki who that is, and the man is introduced as Lester, rank 9 in the school. Yabuki explains that anyone among the top 12 ranked is referred to as a page 1. Page 1 students are the strongest in all of the school. Lester continues to press Julius, demanding that she battles him, eventually grabbing her arm. Julius drops her handkerchief in the process and gets angry at him for saying she is only strong because of her stigma. Julius tells him that she has something she needs to accomplish and that she can't afford to have fun. While this is going on, Ayato watches from the side, falls in love. Episode 2. When Ayato was a child, his sister would often comfort him despite being weak. Over time, he would gradually become stronger, but it is too late before his sister leaves. Before she left, his sister tells him that one day he will need to find a purpose. Ayato asks his sister what her purpose is. She tells him it's to protect him. Ayato remembers last night when he broke up the fight between Lester and Julius. Although he tries to be friendly, Lester ignores Ayato and announces to Julius that he will defeat her one day. Julius tells Ayato that he sure is sticking his nose into a lot of things today, isn't he? After overhearing Julius tell him she has a reason for competing, Ayato asks her what she is trying to achieve. Julius tells Ayato that she needs money to save all the poor people in the country. Yabuki joins the conversation, asking Julius who her partner is for the festa. Julius explains that although she has no friends and no current teammate, eventually a knight will approach her and team up. Yabuki leaves, then Julius tries to as well, but Ayato stops her, asking for directions to the student dorms. Julius laughs, and this makes Ayato comment on her pretty smile. He asks her to show her around campus one day, having to fulfill one wish after losing to him in the duel. Julius sets it up with Ayato as a date for the next day. Ayato then arrives at school and greets Julius, and she returns the favor, which makes the class erupt. Ayato, on the other hand, notices his longtime friend Saya sleeping in the chair next to him. Ayato tells her that she looks the exact same as 6 years ago. Saya tells him that she grew a couple of inches. Ayato asks her about her dad, and Saya reveals her father is a mad scientist who creates different guns. Ayato asks Saya why she is at the school, and she tells him it's a secret. The teacher enters the classroom and asks Saya why she was a no-show at class, to which she tells her she overslept. The teacher punches her on the head and tells her not to be late again. After class, Julius is seen fixing her hair, hoping to show Ayato around the school. Ayato, however, is mid-conversation with Saya. She protests when Julius tells Ayato it's time to go. Saya decides to show around Ayato instead, Julius saying it's a pain to show Ayato around. Julius tells her that she has already promised to Ayato, so she can't break her promise. The two continue to argue until Claudia approaches, telling Ayato she will show him around. Ayato asks her to stop clinging to him, and she gets to business. Claudia tells Ayato that he will be able to take his Ogre Lux exam the next day to prepare for it. Claudia eventually leaves, tells the two girls that she will have Ayato to herself the next day. Ayato suggests to the girls that they both show him around instead of fighting over it. Julius then shows Ayato around, making it seem like Saya is learning the most from her guide. Eventually, Julius catches on to Saya, not helping show Ayato around, and asks her why she is even there. Ayato breaks the tension by offering to go get ice cream. This only worsens it. Saya asks Julius why she is helping Ayato, to which she explains that she lost in a duel. Saya tells her that it doesn't make sense for her to lose to a duel and still be alive. Saya tells Julius that she is strong, but that Ayato is on a whole different level. During their conversation, they are attacked by a group of thugs, trying to damage them. Saya pulls up a giant rocket launcher, ensuring the perpetrators won't escape. He fires at the fountain and destroys the park instead of catching any of the thugs. Ayato comes back wondering what happened, but his eyes are directed elsewhere. Ayato then walks with Claudia to his Ogre Lux exam, talking about who could be targeting Julius. Claudia tells Ayato that it could be from another school trying to get Julius out of the Festus. Ayato arrives at the testing facility and is greeted by Lester, asking why he's there. They watch as Lester flicks through different swords, eventually picking the one that Ayato was going to get. Lester approaches the sword and powers it up, hoping to make it his own. As he powers the sword on Ayato, feels a strange sensation, making him wonder what it was. Lester, on the other hand, wields the sword and screams, hoping to win it over, but he is dropped by it. Sword floats in front of him and shows no interest in becoming his weapon. Compatibility continues to go down until the sword eventually overpowers Lester. Strangely, the sword exerts a powerful presence and points itself towards Ayato. Ayato realizes that the sword is calling to him, so he approaches within the cage. The sword attempts to cut him up, but Ayato is too quick to evade. Ayato eventually grabs hold of the sword and drives it into the ground. Claudia congratulates him for successfully taking control of an ogre Lux. Later that night, Ayato decides to visit Claudia and told him she had some important business to talk about. Ayato lets himself into her place and blushes when he sees her dressed up in her pajamas. Episode 3. Ayato notices that her room is much different than his own, it being super spacious. Claudia explains to Ayato that only page 1s can get rooms like this. Claudia explains that despite being the student council president, only the strong get perks like this. Ayato asks what his reason for being called into her room is, and she explains. Recently, a lot of Festa contenders from their school have been attacked prior to their matches. Claudia reveals that although they don't have any proof, they suspect Lester and his grunts being the ones behind the attacks. Claudia explains that Julius will continue being hunted, so she asks Ayato to protect her. Ayato asks her why it has to be him protecting her. Claudia explains that he is the only person Julius has opened up to since arriving at the school. Ayato, still unsure of the situation, asks why Claudia wants to protect Julius so much. She says it's simply because she is the student council president. Ayato walks home and realizes he's just messing around with girls all day when he's supposed to find his purpose. He then arrives at the meeting location where Julius waits for him, ready to go on a date. Ayato compliments her outfit. This makes Julius embarrassed. They arrive at the center of the city where a massive dome is. Julius explains that this is where the finals for Festa are held, and it's her goal to make it there. While they are walking, Ayato notices Julius being very intrigued by a Bubbayushi Donald's. He buys her the burger and asks why a princess would want to eat at a burger place. Julius tells him that back home she never got to try things that normal people can. Ayato tells Julius that with the recent attack on her, she needs to be careful going outside. Julie tells him that her life belongs to her and she won't cower down. Suddenly Lester approaches, telling Julius she should battle him. Julius refuses. Then Lester gets all angry, slamming his hand on the table. Ayato steps in and tells Lester to chill, telling him to fight him if wants to get beat up. Lester doesn't take this comment lightly, and he smashes the ground, destroying the road. Lester ran to his side and urged him not to fight in public, being bad for his image. Julius comes to Ayato's side and thanks him for sticking up for her. They then walk home and stumble across two gangs fighting. Julius realizes that they aren't actually fighting and it's a trap. Julius decides to let loose a little bit and she destroys all of the thugs. She spares one with a mohawk and questions him, asking who put them up to this. The thug sees the man in the background and he tells Julius it's him, while pointing at a man in the background. Ayato and Julius then rush towards the perpetrators, hoping to find out who's been after them. The perpetrators get some attacks off, but eventually run, having been discovered. Julius tells Ayato they should probably retreat themselves, and they head back to school. Later that night, Ayato sneaks into Julius's room again. This time, she is telling him to strip. Julius realizes what she said after she said it, tells Ayato she just wants to sew his shirt back together. Ayato then goes and sits on her bed like a girl, while waiting for his clothes to be mended back together. He gets tired of sitting around, so he starts looking around her room. He stumbles upon an old photo of Julius at an orphanage, and asks if they are her friends. Julius explains that when she was a child, he would often sneak out of the palace. One day she got trapped in a back alleyway by some men, but she was saved by the children of the orphanage. Julius explains that she would continue to visit them in the poor areas, despite her being a princess. Julius tells Ayato that she needs to win the Festus in order to help all the children and nuns at the orphanage. Ayato asks her why she can't just supply them with money for being a princess. Julius explains that, although she is royalty, the country is run by another country. They have no control over their funds. Julius explains that she wants to win and save the children on her own accord, and without the help of someone else. Ayato gets his coat back and asks Julius about her handkerchief. Julius tells Ayato that it is precious to her, having received it from her friends at the orphanage. The next day, Ayato notices Julius acting strange after receiving a letter. Ayato goes to his classmates to see if they know what's up. They tell Ayato Julius left without a word as a way to protect him. Ayato remembers when his sister protected him, and he decides to run and save Julius with his new weapon. Episode 4. While this is happening, Julius is seen wandering through an abandoned parking garage. Suddenly, the ceiling above her breaks, forcing her to use her magical powers to stop the attack. Julius calls for her perpetrator to reveal themselves, to which he does, and it's one of Lester's grunts, Silas. Silas applauds Julius for figuring out his identity and stopping his initial attack. Julius tells Silas that she knew it was him after their initial confrontation at the burger shop. Silas learns that Ayato deliberately aggravated Lester to get him to attack them. Silas proposes a duel where the winner has to listen to what the other says. Julius agrees and tells Silas she will defeat him. It stops when Lester emerges. Lester tells Silas that he will fight instead and to fight him. Silas stays mighty and confident despite having 2 page ones in front of him. We then learn that it's Silas's plan to defeat Lester and Julius, cover it up as a fight between the two. Lester wastes no time and rushes in to attack Silas. To his surprise, a puppet emerges and blocks his attack with ease. Silas explains that they have no weakness and that they are as strong as a page 1. Lester decides to test that out, using a named attack on the dolls. To his surprise, the dolls emerge totally fine. They start shooting towards Lester, eventually taking him out. Silas laughs and tells Julius she's next and to prepare herself. Lester hears this and attempts to get up and be a hero, but he stops, stunned by the sight of more than 100 dolls emerging. Silas then tells him it's over and watches as his dolls take down Lester. Julius stops just standing around and she sends in a flame dragon, freeing Lester from the dolls. Silas decides to send the dolls in close range, so Julius is forced to use her sword on the dolls. During this, she is shot in the leg and forced against a wall by one of the dolls. Julius tells Silas that she knows who is behind him, it being another school specialized in producing magical tools. Silas tells her that she can no longer leave now, but right when he is about to finish her off, Ayato pulls up. He saves the princess, tells her he is there to help her. Julius gets mad at Ayato, asking what he would have done if Silas was too strong. Ayato asks Julius if she is fighting in the festa to protect the children, but who is protecting her? Ayato tells her that he has come to protect her from any threats. Silas gets jealous after listening to them flirt, so he decides to interrupt their conversation. He emerges with all of his dolls ready to fight, but Ayato doesn't back down. He chants a spell and releases his savage force, giving him the ultimate power-up. As if every magic piece in his body aligned, Ayato dashes to Silas's dolls with incredible speed. Silas looks around but can't find Ayato until he is called from behind. Julius, still in Ayato's hands, wonders how he is so strong and asks who he truly is. Silas announces that he will now send all of his dolls into a coordinated attack against Ayato. They all run towards him, faster than before, still don't stand a chance against Ayato. Ayato reads their moves and realizes every doll has a set pattern that they have to follow. Silas becomes angry after learning his technique, so he sends them all to Ayato. Ayato slices through every single doll with one slash, whether it's a strong or weak doll. Ayato tells Silas it's over, but Silas decides to use his trump card. Silas summons his queen doll, larger than any other shown so far. Ayato, however, doesn't back down, and instead, he slices it up just as easily as the last ones. Silas realizes he has lost, so he tries to fly away on one of his dolls. Julius tells Ayato it's her time to shine, summoning wings of their own and flying after Silas. They fly into his view, and Ayato delivers the final blow, knocking Silas down to the ground. Ayato reveals that he also got Claudia's help. They need not worry about retrieving his body. The two continue hanging out in the air, enjoying the moment. However, Julius stops after seeing Ayato's body go out of control. He gets covered with chains and his power is sealed, putting him to sleep. It is revealed that years ago, his sister cast the spell on Ayato, limiting his power. Ayato eventually wakes up to Julius's rosy cheeks, asking if he is okay. Julius thanks Ayato for saving her, telling him to stay in her lap. Julius gets embarrassed when Ayato makes it all weird, so she puts her hand on his face, covering his eyes. She eventually asks Ayato what that was, sealing his power. Ayato explains that his sister put a lock on him, and he can only use his true power for a limited time. Ayato explains that his sister went missing 5 years ago, and she must have a reason for sealing Ayato. Ayato then asks Julius if he can be her partner for the Festa's battle. Having witnessed his power firsthand, Julius decides to accept him as her teammate and compete together. Claudia, on the other hand, is busy with Silas, easily defeating him. After this, she is approached by Yabuki, asking what they are going to do with Silas. As they talk about their plans, it's revealed members from the other school are watching them on a nearby security camera. Episode 5. Later that week, Claudia attends a meeting between all of the school's student council presidents. One of the presidents urges them to begin their meeting, but he is interrupted by another president. The presidents continue to argue with each other, showing they are not on friendly terms. Claudia, on the other hand, seems pretty friendly with most of the student council members. She is asked by one of them about a new Lux they are producing. Claudia avoids answering the question and redirects it onto Alicant, opposing school who also helped Silas. They ask the president of Alicant why he is helping Claudia, but he seems like a puppet, unknown to what's going on behind the scenes. One of the other presidents calls Claudia out for doing something suspicious, but another president stops him. He tells them it's time they get to talking business. The Alicant president stops him. He tells them he would like to do a coordinated project together with all of the schools using his facilities. Ayato, on the other hand, is in a rush to class, where he bangs into another girl also in a rush. He knocks her down, then stares blatantly at her legs. He offers her a hand up, but then notices a stick in her hair, so he grabs it for her. This girl is clearly very shy, not used to interaction, so she jumps around like a kid. Her uncle calls her over. She apologizes to Ayato, leaving him behind. Ayato receives a message from Julius, telling him to come train in the stadium with her. Ayato heads over there and engages in a friendly battle with Julius. She surrounds him in flames and seems to overpower him. However, Ayato is just too strong. He slices through it all and rushes towards Julie, ending the battle. Julius asks Ayato how long he can keep his ultimate form up, and Ayato tells her 3 minutes max. He asks if there really is anyone strong enough to stop him within 3 minutes. Julie explains some of their competitors. Talks about different student council presidents, them all being top fighters. Julius then moves on to asking Ayato how he can capitalize his Lux's power. Although it's known that he has the Ogre Lux, Servesta, the powers behind it are unknown. Interrupting their training is Saya, who gets mad at Julius for hogging Ayato. Surprisingly, Lester is teamed up with Saya, giving them a strong duo. Claudia then approaches along with some members of Alicant. Girls from Alicant run around the training facility until Claudia introduces them. Firstly, we have Camilla, and then Ernesta, two scientists from Alicant. Claudia explains that they have a joint training operation. Alicant is there to check out their training facility. Julius is unconvinced, so she asks the Alicant girls what their real reason for coming is. Ernesta approaches Ayato and says they are interested in him. Ernesta tells Ayato she likes him, then gives him a kiss, enraging the other girls in the room. Camilla this time takes a turn at talking, points out Saya's weapon, recognizing the maker. She tells Saya that the maker of her weapon was a failure that was kicked out of Alicant. Saya tells Camilla that although they may not be perfect, she shouldn't disrespect her father like that. Camilla explains that as the leader of the group that kicked out Saya's father, she can't accept his ideas. Claudia tells them to stop fighting and urges them to leave. Saya stops them, however, and tells them she will get her revenge in the festa. Saya then approaches Ayato and tells him to be her partner. This makes Julius fight with her. As Ernesta and Camilla walk around the school, they mention that the only thing in their way is Ayato. Ayato, unaware of this, talks with Yabuki until he notices the girl from earlier slapped by her uncle. He yells at her, then tries to slap the girl again, but Ayato steps in and stops him. The uncle introduces himself and then introduces the girl as Kirin, his niece. He tells Ayato that he is blood family to her, and that he has no place in getting in his way. Ayato doesn't back down, however, and tells the uncle to let Kirin decide. He tells Ayato that if he can defeat Kirin in a duel, then he can help her. Kirin's uncle tells her to defeat Ayato, so she initiates the duel against him. The two begin the duel and Kirin pulls out her sword, it being a short katana. She rushes towards Ayato and delivers multiple quick slashes, pushing Ayato back. During this duel, Julius approaches and sees who Ayato is fighting. Yabuki joins in on the conversation while recording and reveals that Ayato has been fighting for about 4 minutes. Julius realizes Ayato will soon be at his limit and forced to admit defeat. Ayato realizes this as well and charges in, hoping to finish the duel quickly. Because of him rushing in, Ayato is pushed back and sliced by Kirin, ending the duel. The uncle laughs at Ayato and tells Kirin to go back home with him. Julie approaches Ayato and asks him what reason he could possibly have to duel the rank 1. Episode 6. While walking back, Kirin's uncle shows disappointment on how long it took Kirin to defeat an unranked student. He reminds her how much he has helped her to reach all the way to rank 1 in the school. Ayato, on the other hand, is laying down, listening to Julius ridiculed him for fighting someone when she told him not to. Julius, however, tells Ayato that she would have been more disappointed if he turned a blind eye to Kirin's uncle treating her the way he was. Julius tells Ayato that she wished she would have won, at least. Julius then tells Ayato that Kirin is only 13, and Ayato thinks back of her body and is shocked to learn she is 13. Julius shows Ayato some of the top-ranking students, the number 2 being Claudia. Julius then informs Ayato about Claudia's Ogre Lux, having the ability to see into the future. Kirin, on the other hand, doesn't use an Ogre Lux at all, uses just a Japanese sword. Julius tells Ayato now that he battled Kirin, a majority of his power is revealed, so they have to stay vigilant in their training. Ayato notices his badge is broken, so he takes a visit to the student council president. Claudia talks to Ayato about him dueling Kirin, her saying she never thought he'd lose. Claudia then talks about her uncle, telling Ayato that he is a high-ranking official in their city, Asteric. Claudia tells Ayato that the only reason he is as high-ranking as he is because of Kirin's achievements. Ayato walks home thinking about what he will do to help Kirin. Upon arriving home, he is greeted by Kirin, telling him she wants to talk to him. Kirin thanks Ayato for standing up for her despite them being strangers. Kirin tells Ayato that what he did made her really happy. Ayato then walks over to Kirin, pats her on the head, telling her to be quiet for a moment. He goes over to the door and opens it to see a group of people listening in on them. They decide to walk through the school grounds to get away from all the people. There, Ayato asks Kirin about her family's sword style. He tells her that he studies a style similar to it, but not being the same. Kirin compliments how well we was able to move around on his feet, avoiding her attacks. Kirin tells Ayato that her only strength is the sword, and that she is clumsy and a coward. Ayato assures her that she is strong and tells her not to worry about those things. He then asks her why she is fighting so hard. Kirin explains she wants to help her father. Kirin's uncle has helped her reach where she is by teaching her, and though he has been strict to her. Kirin then takes a turn asking a question, asking how he is so strong. Kirin asks if she can train with him, her not having anyone strong to train with. Ayato tells her that it's not just him, but Julius as well. Kirin tells Ayato that she doesn't want to get in the way of their relationship, so Ayato proposes they train together in the morning. Kirin decides to take Ayato up on his offer and train in the morning exclusively. Suddenly, Saya jumps down from the trees and starts strangling Ayato. Ayato asks why she is outside, strangles him, to which she explains she was looking for him. Saya asks who that girl with him was, and Ayato explains that it was Kirin. Saya thinks to herself, despite Kirin being 13, she sure has a big rack. Ayato tells her despite her being strong, she has a reason for fighting her father. Ayato then goes to lunch the next day and is approached by Julius. There, Julius tells Ayato Kirin can definitely not train with them. She demands Ayato to tell her more about his relationship with Kirin. Julius realizes Ayato is acting too casually with it, so nothing is going on, so she stops pressing him. While they eat lunch, the Alicant girls are at work, planning their next stunt. They watch from a security camera and observe Ayato running in the morning with Kirin. They talk about how they will suppress Ayato in the future. Somehow the girl's camera continues to follow them running, getting any angle possible. While they continue to run, they realize the fog is getting thicker, so Ayato proposes to hold hands. Kirin doesn't hesitate, and she takes Ayato's hand, but he shakes it off. Suddenly, roadblocks appear before them, and a group of monsters run out at them. Ayato initiates the fight by slicing an arm off one of the monsters, but it goes right back to it. The monster then lunges towards Ayato, but it is sliced up again. The monsters continue to regenerate, making it seem impossible to defeat them. Kirin slices one up 100 times and finds the core. After slicing its core in half, the monster stops moving, so they finish them quickly. While they are inspecting the core, more monsters start firing at them, causing the ground to break. Ayato falls in the hole, and Kirin tries to save him, but she ends up getting herself stuck down there as well.